Alright, hello everyone. I hope you enjoyed our series on myth busting, which was episode number 5. If you haven't seen episode number 1 to 4, please do head over to our YouTube. We have it on X as well, and you can check them out. Do keep those questions coming. In episode number 6, we just released our manifesto. So, the Libertarian Party of India has just released our manifesto. We have the author right here, which is Dhruv. I don't know which square he's going to be in, but he's right there for me. So, Dhruv, and we'll be joined with our regular guests, who's Tushar and Himanshu as well. So, what we are going to do today is we are going to dissect this manifesto, see how it applies to our current India, because that's kind of everybody's biggest problem. Hey, libertarianism, how can it be applied to like a country like India? It can work for Argentina, fine. But those laws of economics, physics, gravity, they don't work in India. So what we are going to do is I'm going to ask some questions. We're going to try and figure out which part of these manifestos applies to India. So Dhruv, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. And let's talk about let's talk about your thoughts on this manifesto first. Like what is it that you had in mind when you started writing this?
See, any movement for the betterment of any sort of peoples or group of people has to be motivated by ideas and not brute force. It was Margaret Thatcher who said America was created out of philosophy, and most countries before that had been created by brute force. One king decided, to do something bad. One king wanted some extra territory. He raided, pillaged villages. But America was created by philosophy, and that is one thing. Why I quote America is, well, the Indian constitution borrows heavily from other constitutions, which in turn borrow from America. So it's themselves back to the American constitution. So my motivation for writing this was our movement, the movement for revival of markets. And I say revival very carefully, because for one point in time we did have markets, not free, not how I'd personally like them to be, but we did have markets, we did have trading policies. There were imperial ambitions in them, but we did have them. So this movement for revival of markets, and more importantly revival of index civilization, should have ideas behind it, and I wanted to pen them down. I wanted to express those ideas. So this was the reason for writing the manifesto, and that is what I think it is. It is basically what the movement is, what it stands for, written to the best of my abilities.
All right, excellent. It was well written. I think it was well received by the following that we had as well. And are there any questions that people have asked so far about the Constitution to you? Are there any specific thing? Because I have a few. So let's start off with. Are there anything in the manifesto that talks about like safeguarding India's privacy, right, against a growing surveillance state? Like, is there anything in the manifesto that talks about an individual's privacy?
I'll say one thing, that the entire manifesto is a dedication to the individual's privacy. The privacy of the individual is but only one part of his entire existence. What I have done here, what I intend the document to be, is basically a hymn or an arti in Sanskrit to the individual. That the individual is sacrosanct. Everything from his privacy, his life, his self-defense, his property, his religion, his culture. The government has no power, has no competency, and has no right to touch it. And moreover, to point out the special section which talks about, or special lines which I think I had in mind by talking about privacy, was freedom from the political class. Not just we are not pawns in their place, we are not their slaves. They have no right to know what I am doing, or whatever. These so-called surveillance capitalism, which is not capitalism, it's just the government arm twisting companies to release their data, is basically, it could be recording us right now. So it's pathetic, and all these humongous spy agencies have their reach all over. So this particular line I had in mind. Additionally, freedom from the overreaching power of babus, and freedom from being puppets of the political class. These two specific lines I wanted to highlight. Yes, these do point to the previous.
Excellent. All right. Do you have anything to add, Tushar, Himanshu?
Yeah, Dhruv put it aptly that what is the foundation that we are building on. So that is this manifesto is verbally communicating that this is our vibe that we are starting.
Right. So the next question that I have is, okay, how does your manifesto define Jugaad, and how does it align with like the libertarian principles?
I think Jugaad is basically, like, in English the term is called McJavering. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but the term is McJavering.
McJavering, yeah.
McJavering. And what basically I think the definition of Jugaad is given the resources you have in hand, you try and do and optimize a difficult problem, or try and optimize a solution to a difficult problem. So I think that is jugaad, and these resources are generally and as the colloquial definition goes, these resources generally have very little correlation with the solution. Like I've seen, to give an anecdotal example, I have seen people build entire houses from tire tubes, the actual tire tubes that we see. So that is one
Right.
sort of jugaad. I see, like this is just an anecdotal example, but in the context of libertarianism, what I think that does is that essentially conveys the spirit of libertarianism, that if you don't have the resources, you can always build one, and no matter how silly they look, if it does the job, it is the most appropriate resource at hand.
Yeah, if it is the most efficient way to do things, you may as well just do it, right?
Right, exactly. So that's exactly what I think of when it comes to jugaad in the context of libertarianism. Additionally, I also like to convey that rather than stealing, build a much more cheaper, efficient solution. That is also a scenario where I picture the spirit of libertarianism playing out. That hey, I don't need to fail. Someone who has more resources than me will obviously succeed, but I won't fail either, right? It's not if someone else is winning, I am losing. It's not like that. It's with whatever resources I have, I win and I build, and that's how I define jugaad, and I think it fits in the context of libertarianism.
But
Perfect.
in my sense, jugaad is more a fight against the regulators. The more the regulation we have, the more jugaad we have to do.
Certainly. Himanshu raised a very good point, and I think one of the very reasons why the person had very little resources to begin with is because of the regulators. So yes, I'll agree that a constraint on resources is generally because of regulation, and that is definitely, I agree 100%.
Perfect. Let's move on to the next question, which is there anything in your manifesto that promotes free markets in India? If so, how? What is the definition of this whole thing in the manifesto?
I think the first major bullet point that I talked about is what promotes free markets in India generally, and moreover, to define markets, I think it's a market in ancient times actually meant a physical place where people sat, traded, and exchanged goods.
Right.
But today, a market is virtual, can be real physically also, and has extended. Like the old definition does not stand. What I think the definition of a market is basically any medium for exchange of goods, thoughts, and services. So these three things have to be exchanged. Either of these three things, or perhaps even all of them, have to be exchanged. So when I envision a free market for India, I simply see that the corrupt political class, and the political class just doesn't stop at politicians. It goes much more deep than that. It goes much more. I'll rather say that the politicians only the topmost layer, and everyone has their eyes on them. So politicians are actually much more accountable than the people serving them, immediate serving them, because no one really knows the chief secretary, or very few people know the name of the chief secretary to the prime minister, but everyone knows the name of the prime minister. But it's actually
right.
the chief secretary calling out the shots. So what my aim of the free market is, or my envisioning of the free market is, that these people should have very little say on how the economy goes, or quite literally anything, because these people do not build anything. These people have no skin in the game. So, and much more than them identifying or us identifying who has skin in the game, let the market, let this medium itself identify, let this medium itself churn out the best. Let there not be some sort of middle entity that judges who's good and who's bad, and tries to calculate when to do that, because these things are very dynamic. Like in computer science, it's an NP hard problem. You can't do it in normal time to actually figure out who's the most productive. So when I say that, when I envision a market, some people raise the point that say, hey, do you support Ambani Adani, or do you hate Ambani Adani? I like to say that it's, well, both, because these people do contribute a lot, but they are also in bed with the government, and both things are true generally. So this is what I think when I think of free market, is that
so that brings me to my next question actually, which is like, what is like the individual's freedom now in entrepreneurship in India with, is it it is a limiting factor right now, right? Okay, so let's say somebody wants to get into the energy industry. Like, I don't think they can afford to, everybody gets in bed with the government. That's not possible. There's a reason to get in bed with the government, which is some kind of monopoly, right? So how can your manifesto, is there anything in this manifesto that changes these aspects of, entrepreneurship?
about entrepreneurship, I'll just say one thing, and I think Tushar can take this question much better than me, but I'll say one thing for certain, that my entire thing that the entire motive of I've tried to convey through this manifesto, is that I want to make the government so bloody small that no matter if you get in bed with the government or if you don't, it shouldn't influence any of what you do. Only your merit and only what the product and good you deliver should influence your end outcome. So coming to entrepreneurship, the current scope of entrepreneurship and current situation, I'd like Tushar to talk about it.
Tushar, let's go.
See, there was a certain index called ease of doing business, and we were nearly at the bottom of the rung by in the 90s and even till 2000. The situation improved, and after 2014 the situation improved a bit, but still we are in the mid tier. And now, right now, the ranking has simply stopped, and there is some bureaucracy index, that how much problem the bureaucracy creates in South Asia and Southeast Asia. There, our genius Babudam ranks at the top. So there are reasons behind it. So first one is being the number of See, how the system works here is that you have some problem. Your natural response is the government should do something.
Right.
Now, who is the government? Who leads the government? The politician leads the government. So automatically he promises that I will do something about it. And what is his solution? He cannot physically do something, since for all its fault, Constitution doesn't allow anything much about to do physically. So he gets involved in passing some legislation or regulation, which automatically comes under the purview of some bureaucrat who knows that this cannot be done. So what I will do is that those who can pay me, I will give him an exception. By this way, you simply raise the cost of doing business, and only those who can pay the costs, high costs involved in business, can function in. Taking a simple example, suppose someone builds a nuclear reactor in his home or in his garage.
Right.
The government will come and confiscate and not realize that this is some marvelous innovation that is achieved. It is simply, you cannot simply get all the permissions to do the innovative things like that. And this also creates a culture of fear that if I try something, first question is it legal or not?
Yeah. Right.
Yes, is it legal or not? By default, everything is illegal, and that is why even Milley emphasizes that though things that are not under law by default are legal, not illegal. And this point need to come across. So this is missing here in India, and this attitude of fear and lack of innovation and lack of risk taking is that's why we see all these people these politicians and bureaucrats who are supposed to be in the politicians and bureaucrats who are supposed to get involved in making businesses, because I see even Kamath tried to Kamath in his interview with Prime Minister Modi tried to draw parallels between politicians and politicians and entrepreneurs, and I also covered the same topic last time as well. So there are certainly parallels involved in this field, and those entrepreneurs who join the field of politics because they find it much more lucrative, and then those who are a bit low risk taking, they join the field of bureaucracy because rent seeking is there going on as well.
Right.
So, and naturally, any disruption in their rent seeking businesses, they naturally try to stifle innovation in those fields. So that's why software went right under their nose, because they simply didn't know what can we do about it.
Yeah, there are a lot of examples of individuals like this throughout the years, trying to defy this. For example, I think there was a guy in the US, it was even covered in a movie, a guy in the US who built his own rocket in his home and wanted to go to space, like on his own, and that was a movie that basically taught people about, hey, like the government cannot own a monopoly of the space. Like you can go if you want. And even now there is an example of even Rowan Atkinson basically talking about, his comedy, where, the only reason comedy can exist is if everybody is a target. You cannot just say, oh, you can't joke about this. No, when it comes to comedy, everybody is fair game. Everything is fair game.
Yeah.
And, you're in a target.
And one more example I like to give, that like Ola versus Ether. So so Ola EV, basically they are in bed with government because they are getting the PLI subsidy, whereas the Ether EV is not getting. I don't know why they are not qualified for that. Yet Ether EV is performing better than Ola. Like everyone is suggesting that take Ether. like Ola scooters, you cannot trust them when it will burst or get
So
get
that
into
is true.
flames.
That is based on actual evidence, is what it is, right? Because I also found like many people do have the ether around these parts. So yeah, interesting. The next question.
So
Yeah.
basically, what ends up happening is that, I emphasize this point as well, that when politicians, bureaucrats, who are the final end of any legislation, because they are the executive and administrative. So basically, every action becomes dependent on their whim. What do they need? Do they need their egos satisfied, or do they need pockets? That's why what we propose is that, and Dhruv put it more harshly, that get rid of babus in every sphere of life. So that's what we are basically trying to do, and needs to be done for the welfare of the people. And
So
I don't understand why everyone wants to be hostage to some. You hate politicians, you hate bureaucrats, but you still want them to rule you.
I mean,
How
people
are
are
you living with this dissonance?
people are scared, man. Even Dhruv should be. He wrote the manifesto, so we don't know what's going to. We don't know.
See, yeah, see, that's
There
what.
might
Dhruv
be
is doing face reveal now.
there might be a guy coming right now, putting a bag over his head and like taking.
That's what I'm saying. That they play on our fear.
Exactly, yeah, excellent. So let's yeah, so this is about Indian democracy, right? Like, so how does this manifesto now address the challenges that Indian democracy is going to face? Like, are there anything specific in here that we can look at that addresses this challenge?
I personally feel that the most important challenge is that I think I find two things that no one really talks about. Firstly, I think India has ample laws on everything. Firstly, like so many laws that it covers literally every subject you can think of, and like it's just bizarre. Yeah, like if you're making laws on the percent GST on the different flavors of popcorn, so it certainly means that we have a shit ton of laws, and we need to do something about it.
I love that popcorn incident just for that,
Yes.
because everybody could understand popcorn and everybody loves caramel popcorn. There is nobody who didn't like caramel popcorn.
No. I
Really?
hate it.
Oh, you.
I hate it. I want them to be abolished. And I question everyone who likes them.
So Himanshu will leave right now, like. So I mean, like, at the end of the day, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. It was like everybody understood popcorn, and what is this extra tax for that little bit of a syrup on it? I think that was what like really broke things wide open.
So yeah, so my point was, see, if you have this nonsense sort of portrayed, that if you think that that is something, that condiment is something that needs taxation, or if you have laws specifying the amount of tax on that small particular condiment if a particular syrup is poured, that just means you have a lot many laws. Additionally, if you have so many laws and yet you see this terrible rule of law in India, why that? I mean, incidents of rape, incidents of murder, you first of all, people are very afraid to report them, even because it's their social stigma. That again, that is their personal choice. That's a culture issue. I would personally not recommend doing that. If something bad has happened, at least tell it to the authorities, then something can be worked out. But once you see these many cases, you see that they are pending. Either they are pending, or very honestly, that I'm not afraid to be outspoken, things are bought out, things are settled, things are done by brute force. There's either the local politician involved, or the police system involved, or the civil servant involved, or in some cases all of them. So it's generally that the one with the most power is given justice quickly, efficiently, and according to his desire.
Right.
And that's not how it's supposed to be. And I think these two are the most important problems that are plaguing India, which I think very little people are focusing on, because they're the root of all other problems. You see corruption, there are multiple laws to deal with corruption, but they are not enforced. You see bribery, bribery is an extension of corruption, but there's multiple laws, they are not enforced. Rape, multiple laws, not enforced. All other major crimes, border security, internet fraud, every superficial crime that you see committed, there's a law to deal with it, but it's not enforced. So there's something that's gone wrong. And if you have much more laws for good people to follow, and you have very little enforcement for bad people to follow them. I hope I'm clear in what I'm trying to say, that
Right.
the number of laws you make It's actually difficult job for good law-abiding people. And the bad your enforcement of those laws, the worse your enforcement of laws, it's actually the bad people who are enjoying.
Yeah, I mean, like you look at, for example, again, I have to go back to popcorn. Because when everybody has been abroad at some point, right? I mean, everybody meaning everybody who can. You go there, you see like 150 flavors of popcorn. You come to India, there are like 4. Like I'm starting to see the pattern here where people are like, oh, I can't make a popcorn with that and this because this will be taxed at that and that will be taxed at this and this will be taxed at that. So let's just not do that. Let's just give salted and this. Right? Is that what's happening like on ground?
And suppose someone like discovers a new flavor of popcorn, maybe they will be jailed because they did not follow the mandate or something.
For me, the most bizarre thing was I went and first, when I heard about the popcorn issue, I went and first told my wife, hey, this is caramel popcorn is going to be charged. She was like, yeah, that's because of the sugar. I'm like, you're also conditioned to think that way, and it's not wrong. That's because of the sugar in the popcorn. Yeah, I get that. But here I was standing, no, I don't get it. It's still, popcorn. So it was, people are conditioned to think that, and even if we bring this out in the open, I'm sure there are a lot of people who go and say, hey, it doesn't probably matter. Next, yeah.
One point I would like to make is that a lot of the laws simply exist because people feel the way certain they feel about the problem. I was joking that caramel popcorn should be abolished, but that doesn't mean that when we would actually abolish caramel popcorn.
Exactly.
I was this also points out that how do we express our frustration? Our frustration is expressed through government mechanism. This also I have realized that I am conditioned to that as well. So
threatening jail to anybody is like a perfect way to intimidate someone.
This is where libertarian comes in. That your personal preferences doesn't mean that the government should do something about it.
I'd just like to complete this point before we go on to the next question. That you're very right in pointing out, let's just move away from the popcorn. But the example that you gave, that people are not actually introducing these flavors because it's actually difficult, is true when it's applied to other stuff. Like this is exactly how regulation hampers innovation. That's not just popcorn. Popcorn's not an example.
Yeah,
like there's
exactly.
multiple case studies that if you read, because of unnecessary regulations, the good people actually could not extend their reach or could not offer better services.
Even an entrepreneur who wants to get into the FMCG will be like, hey, let's do all of these things, and then they'll come up with, but we gotta work out all these different scenarios. Like, I mean, which kid is ever going to revolutionize anything if they aren't allowed to experiment, right? I think that's kind of why we haven't innovated like in years. I feel we haven't innovated anything major.
One thing is that it isn't that innovation doesn't take place. It's right. The problem is that innovation doesn't scale. And scale is where the Baburam targets. It doesn't target the small player. It targets when you started becoming big or you are already big.
Right.
That's why when we see all these innovations are coming out of these colleges and all, but they never end up scaling up because of all the regulations and requirements involved. And regulators are amused that how are we supposed to deal with this, and they simply let go of the problem that some higher up will question me, and then this is how they stifle innovation. So basically, you are only as fast as the bureaucrat understands what can be done.
Right.
And since their understanding is already limited, and their attention is also very limited, things grind down to a halt. See, I think that management education is management and structural education is really important for any policy maker. We severely lack that in there. Our policy is more quick fix and one-dimensional, one step. You do this problem is solved. Never thinking about the second order effects. And since people aren't trained in that as well, that's why they come with these quick fixes.
Yeah, so in the group also we kind of discussed why is it that during British Raj we had such huge figures coming out like J.C. Bose, Satyendranath Bose, Rabindranath Tagore, or even from our Mysore, what's the ISC founder? Just forgot his name.
Vishwesharaya.
Yes, Visheshwarya is there, and then we have Ramanujan is there. So many people just coming out during the Brits era, and suddenly after independence, we just vanish. What happened exactly? And we were discussing like during those time we used to have those princely states, and those monarchs used to have their navratans. They used to basically invest on few of these brilliant individuals. So probably we should bring back such VC culture again. Like they were basically like VCs before
Yeah, I
VCs
mean,
were in
like
existence.
a lot
Even
of
even Dr. Ambedkar was sponsored by a monarch.
He was
even
sponsored by
even
Gaikwad
Da
family.
Vinci was sponsored by the Medici, the monarchs of that time, right? I mean, like, I think certain innovators need to be given something to push
That
the.
is the structure of R&D. You can't have R&D on a budget, you can't fix this is the amount I'm putting, and between this you give me a revolutionary product. No, because if it was built within a budget, it wouldn't be a revolutionary product. It would be a well thought out product. If it's revolutionary, you have to experiment a lot. And first of all, as said, Babudham doesn't allow you to experiment. There's less wealth creation, hence there's no money, and there's multiple issues arising out of Babudham. And just one quick thing I'd like to add here is that this concept of, I just say that it's not like we aren't producing people at the caliber of JC Bose. Well, because things were different back then, physics was primitive. Like these subjects were very primitive compared to what they are today. But moreover, the thing is, we are producing them. We are just producing them in the US. Like you have people in the ranks of Arvind Srinivas who will be remembered for a long, long time. I'm sure, because the amount he's done, he's actually thumped OpenAI, which had direct backing of Elon Musk. So that is some very, very big thing. And there's additionally we have multiple other such entrepreneurs. We have Naval, we have Balaji Srinivasan and their likes, who actually have produced stuff, just not in India. And the reason is the environment out there is much more conducive than here in India. So
Are you seeing a shift in like little kids, right, who have some entrepreneurship mentality? How would they grow in the libertarian, according to our manifesto, according to the Libertarian Party? So let's say I'm a 16-year-old kid who has a big dream and wants to make something. How would I live in the libertarian scenario?
our only solution, as Milley very elegantly put, I've tried to convey it through the manifesto, but as Milley very elegantly put it in his speech, is that it shouldn't be as hard to start a business or to deal with the legislation of the business as with actually running the business. As like
So I just should be able to just say, here's my name, here's my phone number, this is the type of business, enter, done.
Done.
Right? Done. What else do people need to know? Like, I don't see what else people need to know.
Well, that's for a start. So at some point, you wouldn't even require that. You want an apple? Here is an apple.
Here is
These clothes.
right.
Yeah. So jokes apart. So that's why we are building the free market platform to bypass all this waiting for getting elected and all. Build the platform already. You want to start something? Join the ecosystem. Some cities like Bangalore and Mumbai and NCR, Delhi NCR already have the ecosystem. You can ask for funding and all, but you cannot. Everyone cannot move to these areas, and we have a whole lot of people who have innovative ideas.
A
So
city like
that's where.
Bangalore will be tremendously benefited, right? By just releasing these shackles. They could because they already have the talent here right now.
Yeah, and talking about a personal anecdote. So I'm building here a sort of ecosystem for entrepreneurs in Chandigarh Tri-City, which isn't that popular for its entrepreneurship.
Right.
So my experience has been that there is inefficiencies on both sides. There are startups who want funding but don't know where to get it, and whether that person will give me or not. And secondly, there are investors who have the money but don't know who to give it to, because they the ideas that come up, or the people who show zeal enough to reach out to them, don't have such really that amazing ideas. It isn't like that. So this is inefficiency. My understanding is that financing is already there, and those brilliant ideas are already there, but there is a mismatch. So this is where I'm trying to build the ecosystem. Then I realized that a whole lot of Chandigarh is a tier 2 city. It isn't a tier 1 like Delhi. So once we are successful here, we will plug in the real free market is focused on social entrepreneurship ventures. But once we do it on the normal non-social entrepreneurship ventures, once we succeed in building the ecosystem for them, then we will expand it to across the country and maybe across the world. So this venture will solve the problem much better than any government ever can or ever could. You see, talking about what the government is doing for is doing for entrepreneurship, they are handing out 50,000 or 1 lakh loans for starting some small tea stall or something. I'm not derogating them, it's fine. But this isn't the job of the government to do it. It's job of the banks and private capital to do it.
Right.
So, but you clamp down on private capital and then want to take credit for doing the same thing yourself. That's where we say that this is wrong, and this is how the inefficiency needs to be corrected, and not waiting for actually coming into the parliament and deciding that this needs to be done. Let's do it, and it's better to ask sorry than
Right. And Chandigarh actually has been showing those signs. I think they also have like a big literature festival called Valley of Words. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I do feel like they've always tried to break out, but I feel all these regulations are stopping people from like really showing that
we are
side
suffering
of the...
we are suffering from the retirement class here. All these retired bureaucrats, lawyers, and army personnel. They just want to keep it a retirement city. And also, one thing, I don't know why people are really angry at crowds. I'm really happy when I'm in Mumbai or in some crowded city. I'm happy that there are so many people to experiment on businesses with.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, they are basically misanthropes larping as anthropes. So yeah, so putting that point aside. So Chandigarh or any tier 2 city is basically dead after 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Why? Because it isn't like enough people aren't there to enjoy their lives outside. It is a young country. People are active 24/7. So things are supposed to move. Businesses are supposed to be open 24/7.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I think Himanshu will confer. That's what I miss about Bangalore. When we were there in 2002, 2003, I could go at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. You'll find all these shops open. You could eat a burrito, whatever the heck you wanted. It was great for night shift as well. You finish your shift at like 4 a.m. Drive back. But I don't know. I don't understand like why this is stopped. Like,
yeah, this is what I'm talking about. This retirement lobby has decided that this is how it's supposed to be. I think it is called NIMBYism or something like that.
There's a thing for it. I thought it was some safety or something like that. I was like, what safety? Like if I want to go have a burger at 4 a.m., I'd rather
No.
I just interject here. YIMBYism and NIMBYism have more to do with transit, building houses, but Tushar is very right. He's attacking the root of the cause, and it's just it's just people phobia. It's just that people different from me, people having different experiences shouldn't be around me. I just want my bubble. I just want the cocoon of people similar to me who think like me, and I just want to live in that because that's what gives me safety. So that's
I'm telling you, it all comes back to popcorn. Like, just because Tushar doesn't like caramel popcorn doesn't mean you should stop popcorn.
Yeah. And additionally, what would be a safer place, with more people or less people?
Exactly.
And if you say that less people are more trustable, that automatically means that you hate people, because it's really tough to commit a crime when a lot of people are looking at you.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, yes, there were literally hundreds of people at 4 a.m., having their food, or they are going to have their breakfast at that time and head over to office at 5, and they'll all be happy because, at the end of the day, it was more of a lifestyle than saying, I got to get to work at 6. People actually look forward to going and hanging out with their friends at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. in some tea shop, talking about stuff and then heading to work. I feel like that itself is killing that freedom kind of a lifestyle that we should technically have.
Yeah, so, I mean, in Bangalore, I think we used to have nightclubs and pubs open till 2 p.m. or 3 p.m.
And nobody had a problem with it. I don't know why it was shut. I mean,
okay, I get the argument.
Those things. If there is, think of it this way: if there are nightclubs and this ones are open, but there are bakeries and parota stalls open, fine. Like, let everything be open. What is the big deal? Then nobody will even care that that's a nightclub. If you get hungry, you will be in the bakery. Like nobody's going to be
get the argument about the noise thing. I get the argument that there are residential area and disturbances are there. So, I mean, why not build a full area, like a particular area, particularly for nightclubs? Okay, like you build that area, like you open it, there is no disturbance. But even those things are not
I
there.
would say
No,
I
Yeah.
would say
I
no,
don't
I
think
would
so, because you can.
I have an alternate solution.
You're right.
Why not cheapen up the noise reduction technology?
Yes, exactly. That was my thing. Even my room is noise conditioned. I'm making a lot of noise here. My family cannot hear it. Like, I have
Yeah.
conditioned the thing because I naturally talk very loud. So, it is one of it's not such a big technology that you can have a nightclub and not, have a sound tech covering it. So I agree with Tushar on that. There is nothing that cannot be solved with a little bit of tech is what I'm saying. Like,
Additionally, see, Mumbai airport is in the middle of the city. It isn't Navi Mumbai is in the outskirts, but Mumbai airport is in the city. So every 10, 15 minutes, a flight is taking off over you, and some people just get used to it. But someone like me who doesn't travel that frequently, it takes some time. 2-3 times I got frustrated that I cannot simply sleep when I visit here. So this time I decided that I have just use earplugs, and everything was fine after I started using them. So I wasn't going like protesting the airport. No, you don't fly here. I want to sleep or things like that. This is the attitude that these uncles are carrying around.
yeah,
That
I think even roads, right? I mean, like, a lot of people are like, oh, it's making a lot of noise. But then there are so many solutions for that as well. They have those sound panels that are stacked on the side of the highway. So when the cars are going, no sound comes. It's just, yeah, I feel a little more freedom.
your hurt feelings or your discomfort isn't an obligation on the other person. He may do it out of his goodness, but there is no obligation to comfort
Yeah.
you.
Exactly. So basically, how does this manifesto also like reimagine India's future when it comes to holding power over these traditional structures that are there, right? So how does that come into effect?
3 things: individual liberation, technology, personal choice. Well, individual liberation and personal choice are very well connected, but there's a slight difference in there. By individual liberation, I mean the country which has faced invasions for so long is bound to get wrapped up in the concept of collectivism, where it's always us versus them, because we never took. India is one country that has never generated, or India is one civilization. I just make slight amendment that has never invaded any other civilization for random gain. When you have faced invasions for so long, it's understandable that the idea of collectivism has placed roots in you, because
Right.
you never took arms to spread your religion, spread your culture, spread your thoughts. You went, but you went peacefully. You did these things. Once you have embroidered in that collectivist ideology, the individual is very small. Why care about the 1% over the 100? Why care about 1% over the rest of the 99? But this is what this manifesto imagines India, is that at the end, there is light at the end of the tunnel, where you just happen to be these tags that society gives you. You are no more a South Indian believing in a particular religion. You're not dark skinned stuff and stuff. You happen to be that, but that's not your primary identity, and that's not your determining factor of how you choose your life or how your life turns out to be. It's only your actions that will determine how your life turns out to be. That is how, first of all, I imagine, and this manifesto, I've tried to convey that, how we imagine the future of India to be. Secondly, technology, and I think technology is very useful in doing that. Technology provides great leverage. Technology helps you in scaling, and technology also helps in individual liberation. Like all throughout history, ever since the advent of the printing, women's rights, minority rights, rights of the oppressed, voice of the oppressed has grown tremendously. So
Right.
ever since technology comes in, this has happened. And most importantly, now personal choice. You and only you choose, actually, and I say it with full confidence, choose how your life turns out to be, and how you want your life to turn out to be, and how you want to lead your life. You complete personal freedom. And this extends to all matters, through sexuality, through religion, through whatever it is. There will obviously exist these tags. It's not you. We don't create these tags. We choose how much. You should get to choose how much they affect your life. If you happen to born in a so-called low caste category, it shouldn't determine how you lead your life. You shouldn't have restrictions to opportunities out there in the public sphere.
Right.
And this is how, or same for the so-called upper castes. These things should not matter. These things will be there, but they won't matter. And that's how.
Here's my problem with this, right? I mean, like, it's immediately if somebody hears what you're saying, they should be like, yes, let's do this. But I'm saying, there'll be people who will be like, no, this is not right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what do we tell them to say that, hey, you can actually have your freedom? There are people who will say, I will only listen to, what an elder says. Simple example, right? They'll be like,
you can have the freedom of even restricting your life according to your beliefs. I am just saying other people also have a freedom to live their lives a certain way. Just because someone else is a heathen according to you doesn't give you the license of correcting him, or similarly for him.
But you look at what's happening even on X these days, right? You'll say, oh, no, I'm like this, so, you also, it's the same. Again, I have to go back to popcorn, but let's not go there. But at the end of the day, that's kind of the conversations that are happening, right? Like, I'm sure all of you have examples of conversations that people are coming and said, no, this is same thing with religion as well. People are like, no, this is the best religion, this is biggest, look at what this big festival is happening, no other religion compares to this. So even if we have this manifesto, how are we going to convince people, man, like, that this is the right thing to do?
We can say one thing, like, I'm open to hearing any of your thoughts on religion. I think all religions have merit and all religions have demerits. And that's true for all. No religion is without demerits or without merits. Right. I can say that correctly. The thing is, if you think your religion is the most moral, that's free. You're open to think whatever the way you want. But what I'm trying to say is, if you use government to arm twist other people into following your sense of morality, first of all, that's not right. That's immoral. Enforce your sense of morality onto someone because their life is sacrosanct. You can't touch their right to life. That comes number one. And secondly, the government is just incompetent at doing that. Just think about it. I'll just give you one example. I come from a very strong Hindutva background. Like, my entire family is basically all followers of BJP and RSS. Very, very strong. And that too, they didn't hear a word against the Prime Minister. That very strong. Whenever I try making critiques.
And they are right behind you in the other room, is what you're saying.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Suddenly I may disappear, and the person who, puts the bag, maybe my mother just coming, what did you say? So thanks for reminding me. But one thing I just point out to them, like, I have also do take inspiration from these big Hindu kingdoms that were established, and they faced a lot of brunt of the outsiding marauding parties. But I just say to them one thing: you are comparing. Their point is that the Maratha Empire, for example, was the greatest political entity that was ever existing. Why? Because it had the idea of a Hindu kingdom. It enforced Hinduism. It didn't discriminate, because that's a feature of Hinduism. It doesn't really discriminate. It's a very tolerant, not secular. But the one thing that they say is, because it enforced Hinduism, it was the best period ever. But I just say to them, can you just imagine what was happening if you were on the borders of the Maratha Empire? If some Mughal just randomly decided to raid your village and convert all of them by the force of the sword, and that actually happened multiple times. So I say this, that when government involvement in religion has reduced, your religion has only grown. Like, compare the Republic of India to any sort of Hindu empire. Hindus are much more safe, and I'll say this unequivocally, that Hindus are much more safe in the Republic of India, or any religion is much more safe in the Republic of India, or any republic or democracy for that matter, than any other nonsensical theocracy that they'll imagine.
Right.
So I hope I'm making my point clear, that this is how
you've been clear, man. You've definitely been clear. But I'm going to ask you like some tough questions from people's point of view.
Sure. Bring it on.
Himanshu, you also asked some tough questions on, like you've seen how people react to different things, right? They're going to question this manifesto, like left, right, and center. So
yeah,
what we all got to do is question Dhruv. Now we all have to be like, okay, this is
one
people
of
are going
biggest,
to think, right?
Yeah, so one of the biggest critique, people will, ask specifically from the left, or they will say the privatization will basically lead to upper caste hegemony. Like, that's how they term it. Like, because upper caste has so-called social capital, so they will gain control of the capital and basically make sure that lower castes are not allowed to participate, or they're not allowed to grow, and it will lead to feudalism again. That's the kind of jump they make with the privatization argument.
Right. Understood.
Greatest counter I see that is, the free markets are the only morally right way to earn social capital. And if you want the so-called lower caste to have better social capital, you have to open things up in their way. You think the current system of cronyism gives a lot of, leeway to the so-called low caste? It takes 5 minutes for a big upper caste person who's in bed with the government to demolish all other competitive lower caste businesses he sees. He can create so many obstacles in their way that any other means to gain social capital are demolished or hampered in the current system. I'm suggesting exactly that. I want the so-called lower caste to grow. I want harmony between the castes. I want a cosmopolitan society. My view is that of an intermingled...
But you know, the caste system, for example, right? Okay, it exists right now. There are reservations happening and all of that. So if those reservations are taken away, God forbid, right? They are taken away. Are the castes going to be upset with it? Like, what is going to be their frame of mind, with respect to their freedom? Are they going to think that their freedom is being taken away from their lives, or what? How do we normalize this?
Well, they will certainly think that injustice is meted out to them and that their pathway of social justice has been hampered. But we can say one thing unequivocally and unambiguously, that reservations, a moderate, say at very best a moderate way, even if we put all sense of morality outside, at best a moderate way of uplifting the depressed classes. At best a moderate. I am saying two things. First of all, they are not moral. You are attacking an individual's right, and a meritorious individual's right, just because he happens to be from a label that committed something some time back. They are not moral. But moreover, even if they are not moral, government has to uplift the depressed classes. They are at best a moderate solution. You have better solutions out there, and the best solution out there is to enable a cosmopolitan free trade where the lower caste and social capital is not just wealth. And I agree with the leftists on this. It's not just wealth. It's about perceive. It's about how people are perceived. It's about how the depressed classes are perceived. It's about this innate racism stereotyping that this person belongs from a certain caste, so he must be like this is nature. And you actually break that once there's more interactions with people. If you originally think that a Hindu is bound to be a cheater, but you interact with many honest Hindus, any other religion will think, okay, there are good people everywhere. So this is how cosmopolitanism actually helps in building social capital. And the best way to let cosmopolitanism be is with free markets. And this is how privatization will work.
What about property rights then? Is there anything in the manifesto that specifically talks about like property rights in India?
Yes, I think I have mentioned a bullet point which talks about the right to property is sacrosanct, and I think, or property rather, not much that, property is the basis of all of civilization. And I say it very, very carefully. Very, very important, and this is something that I do want to emphasize on, that the difference between people generally say there's very little biological difference between us and our ancestors, say a million years ago, or at least 15,000-20,000 years ago. There's very little biological difference, but the difference that between that of a hunter-gatherer or a wanderer and our civilized way is that we have a very important sense of the why, ours and mine, and this is because of property. We know that this is what belongs to me and this is what doesn't belong to me. So then came these things into picture, where things such as consent, things such as trade, things such as exchange, these actually came into picture. Once the idea of property is sanctified, you actually get to know what to do, how to deal with people, how to trade with people, and property rights hence are the basis of all of civilization.
Right. How about
there's an interesting article about the American experiment. Before they actually thought about the property rights, they did try the communal living, and it failed miserably. Basically, like, people starved, and like, it was a miserable model. So back then itself, they tried this communal way of living and it did not work. And then they realized that property rights is the most like non-contradictory way of basically living and a solution to the law.
Tushar looks like a hunter-gatherer right now, like he looks hungry.
We don't even need to go that far. We have a living example in the form of North Korea. If you follow Yeonmi Park, one of the few who escaped, she makes the point that North Korea has simply no concept of private property. They have removed it out of lingo. And not having property means that you don't even own yourself. You belong to the Kim collective. And Kim Jong-un, whatever Kim Jong-un says you have to do it because he is a part of you. This is the weird wordplay that they are having, and they have. So
the other thing that I want to talk about is like in the manifesto, do we have anything on corruption? Because every party I know who came in has come and said that they are going to remove corruption from India. Like, everybody has upped the corruption exponentially year on year. Nobody has managed to remove anything. So how, in the manifesto, how...
We'll make the...
let me finish the question. The question is how does the manifesto is actually going to deliver on this if there is a promise of removing corruption?
We don't have a promise of removing corruption. we have the promise of removing the cause of corruption.
Okay.
That promise is that these babus or these bureaucrats have the ability to influence things which are out of their mental capacity.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we are targeting. We aim to take away the power of these inept, corrupt, inexperienced only in bribes and looting people, inexperienced people, incompetent people. We are going to take away. We aim to take away their powers and just redistribute power or enable people to live their lives as such. So you don't need to feed bribes to a babu, well, because there's not gonna be many things in his hand. It's all you. That's the promise that we are trying to do.
So
Also,
brings me to
most of the
this.
time when they talk about corruption, they basically mean some businessman has broken some regulations and they say that it's a corruption. So we have to think like, what do they mean by corruption? Like, what exactly is happening when they say corruption is there?
Right. So the
Although
other.
zero corruption is a fantasy. You have to you have to have some new sort of human beings who are not corrupt. Corruption is basically what they're trying to do. Cheating in some way. That these are the rules, you have to follow them. And someone says that I will accept money to break the rules.
To break the rules.
This is
Right.
what basically corruption is.
So basically, what we are trying to say is the lesser rules we have, the lesser corruption is possible at the end of the day. That is kind of what
Yes.
the ideology
Yes,
is. Right?
and zero corruption is a fantasy because we have to work on the foundation that human beings can cheat, human beings can lie, and human beings can be corrupted. Anyone can be
Right.
corrupted. Let's build a system in such a way that they don't, even if they do the worst, they don't end up harming a lot of people in the run.
How about our foreign policy, Dhruv? Like, I mean, does the manifesto actually touch upon anything about, things like our foreign policy and things like that?
The most important things about foreign policy is that free trade, it must be enabled and it must be respected. So the idea of free trade, unabridged, unstoppable, and actually free passage of goods, services, and thought must be done, and that is the most important tool of foreign policy that I
Okay,
have.
let's put it to an example, right? So right now, India has applied a certain amount of tariff to the US, which is what is happening right now, right? But the US seems to have applied like some tariff like 2% or 3% only, while we have applied tariffs of 40-50%. So when the libertarians come in, how is all this going to change?
The 5 in front of the 50 is going to get slashed. So we'll.
Oh, so you mean zero?
Yep.
But one
It
thing,
took me a while to realize, okay, cut the 5 and carry over
but
the
one
zero.
one thing needs to be added to that is that it shouldn't be done in a way that the domestic industry is at a disadvantage. You cannot have free trade while you have over-regulated domestic industry.
True, and that is very correct. That's like special treatment for the outsiders. We do not want that. We simply
So
regulations.
getting rid of regulations and taxes inside and let the disadvantages that their political system have created, let them suffer from that.
Right. So actually, we'll have a tremendous. But what about? Okay, so the next thing, I am sure the Indian businesses, whoever is in right now having monopoly over certain thing, like a car manufacturer, will now be like, no, you cannot import, say, any other cars from outside India at 0% rate. So what happens then?
I would say there are two responses. First of all, we will also be negotiating free trade with other countries, so you can export your car as well. And secondly, you will also enable foreign technology and technology that you have to pay extra for, like engine technology or things like that. You will get you will get that at a much lower cost. You will get foreign talent at much lower cost, because since there would be no restrictions on talent coming into the country as well. That also comes in regulations and tariffs on talent. So that will definitely be lucrative.
It's so good, right? Because anybody in the world can pick up Indian products, and any Indian can pick up any products from around the world, right?
And Tushar was very
how
right.
beautiful it is that.
That is very right. And I'll just say additional. I recommend all viewers to read.
One thing, just cutting upon. One thing I forgot to mention is that also deregulating the finance. A lot of the people miss the point that let's suppose this conversation day before yesterday, we were doing a spaces on Friday. So there was point made that Chinese are producing such cheap steel and such cheap electric vehicles. We can't let them come in here. We need some tariffs to balance out the prices. That was absolutely the wrong approach. What we should have done is that, first of all, there are two things. First of all, there can be Chinese aren't universally producing. I'm going to say entire steel market. The Chinese aren't catering. They may be powerful in some segment. They may be inefficient in others. Indians can compete, taking advantage of that. Secondly, since RBI controls interest rates and banking sector is heavily regulated, seeking finances in the local industry is really hard and is much more expensive. Additionally, energy is much more expensive in India, and in addition to that, labor is much more much more regulated in India. So when we will get rid of all these problems, you will be at much greater advantage.
So when the libertarians come in, RBI is like this, no? Like
at some point when they are no longer needed, yes, but definitely they will lose their control over interest rates. That's the promise.
Right.
Yeah. Nextly, they can definitely, if they want to act together. We used to have a system of, I'm forgetting the name of it. Basically, businesses, merchant guilds. Yeah, merchant guilds. They used to, ancient times, they used to, I mean, it's a few 500 or 1,000 years back. They used to band together and administer themselves. So basically, similar thing can come right now as well. That they collaborate with the financial industry to work on special interest rates to compete with the foreign competitors. It won't be perfect. Some areas they would succeed, some areas they would fail. But definitely that is much better as compared to flat tariffs and not taking advantage of all the foolish or foolery that the other countries seem to be doing.
So basically, if the entire world had libertarian like governments, we would be an actual Earth, right? We would be like everything will happen probably so seamless for the most part, right? I mean, of course, certain areas they will have to protect or whatever, but for the most part, we would be like one race is what I'm feeling, because there won't be any distinction between trade as well, between goods as well, between supply, manpower, people.
But that wouldn't mean that we would have a collective identity. You would have an individual identity. It won't be like we aren't globalists.
Yeah. No, I get it. We won't be like alien races all wearing the same clothes. Like I'm sure that would happen. But in terms of understanding alone, let's say you go somewhere, you will immediately understand where they are coming from, right? Because like the fundamental laws of operation are kind of very similar, and it's about freedom of that individual, and you kind of tend to understand that first before anything else comes there. Interesting. So does the manifesto outline anything about reducing? No. This is the question that took off even on X, which I want to ask you, Dhruv. So how about tackling the issue of economic inequality, right, without resorting to wealth distribution? How is that taken care of in the manifesto?
If you look at Our World in Data, I advise all viewers to look at a website called Our World in Data and just look at graphs depicting economic inequality over time. So if you look at the period in which capitalism was actually enforced and took roots around 1800, the late 1780s and the early 80s. Since then, you see that poverty has fallen significantly. Like there's a sharp drop. Economic inequality has fallen. Like there's a sharp, like a reverse hockey stick, really, a sharp drop, and you'll see things like that. So the point of economic inequality is, since very few people are standouts, large majority of the population is average. Like if you look at distribution of the bell curve, large majority still sits at the center, which is the average. Only 1% are very, very inefficient, and the 1% are very, very, very efficient. Generally, you can't strategically enforce wealth redistribution for these extremes. But since if you open up the markets and you let people act according to agency and volition, the mean of the bell curve or the humongous center, the 99% or 98% in this case population of people, will actually end up having similar results in different areas. And additionally, those results will be much, much better. Like I'm oversimplifying things right now. Any economic expert will take away these things. But my point being, markets are a much more equalizing force, much better equalizing force than wealth redistribution is. So over the long period of time, you will see exchanges happening, and actual wealth in terms of time, in terms of quality hours on hand, in terms of resources on hand, will be actually similar. It won't be, you can't call the bank balance in your bank balance as your wealth. It's only part of it, but the other parts will be much more similar.
But I have a bit of a different take on it. Whether I think that this equality narrative has been hijacked by Marxists, and you cannot simply beat on them. We can talk about it. Basically, the problem is that the Hayek also points out that liberal ideals stay. Following the liberal ideas, that it takes a long time to actually achieve progress on those. And Marxists and Nazis and socialists basically try to quicken up the speed up the process. They said that what you use is of political equality before the law, when you do not have material equality. So that's what the problem they try to solve. So you have to eschew the idea of equality. And one of the greatest leaders that I know is of Lee Kuan Yew, and he said that he outrightly said in public that human beings are not equal.
Right.
Takes a left. He started as a leftist, but he started as a leftist politician. So it takes some guts to admit in the public that human beings are not equal. But the speech he gave was in the context was that you start with the wrong assumptions, then you definitely will get the wrong conclusions. So what he contextualized the point was that human beings are not equal. That's why some need special treatment, some need different treatment. So what Marxists try to do is that they take care of the lower end of the spectrum. Those who have some deficiency, they need to be taken care of. But what we are trying to say is that ideally government shouldn't involved in it. But if it is, then even those of the top rung of the spectrum also need to be taken care of. That they are really valuable and producing such great wealth and creative creations for the society. They need to be valued as well. But in terms of policy making, there would be no special provisions for either.
Right.
But definitely ensuring that no Marxist ever, if he by accident comes into power, ends up bringing those on the top down.
So problem with the Marxists are they believe that wealth is a fixed pie. Like they don't even understand the concept of wealth. Like if we go thousands of years back, we were eating berries and living in forest. So I mean, how wealthy we were at that time. Like we were all equal actually. Like at that time.
Exactly.
So I mean, they think that everything is a fixed pie and they just have to redistribute it. But wealth keeps on changing as productive capabilities increase. Our wealth will also increase because
yes, and equality is not an ideal to strive for. What I'm to base, if I have to sum it up, equality is no ideal to strive for. Equality of opportunity, that's where the entire fights end. And since we are talking about individual liberty, so equality of opportunity is out of question. So this equality narrative is, I think, French made a big mistake by introducing equality in their revolution.
Right.
But it was relevant to their context because the nobles were charged much different than the peasant class. So it made sense in their context. But even the hypocrisy of our system is that we talk about equality all the time, but political caste wants VIP treatment, and people are okay with it.
So basically, my final question for this session on the manifesto, is social welfare policies. Let's talk about social welfare policies. And is there anything in the manifesto that supports certain aspects of it, and how do you view all this through the libertarian lens?
I think social welfare policies are essentially few shillings thrown at the less privileged and the less fortunate, or more importantly, the less resourced, to pacify them, flame wars of class against people who have resources, so that the people who actually ended up creating this steep distinction end up remaining in power. So the common example will be the communists. They always talk about how the rich exploited the poor people. But when actually the communists come to power and the poor people can't help meet their insane quotas, you get the examples of what happened in China and Soviet Russia, where these people were massacred. They were asked to dig their own graves, and stuff happened. So
right.
The point of social welfare is it's basically a pacification, so that the poor people keep obeying, quote unquote, these people, so that, well, they stay in power and they are used as tools or pawns in their disgusting lust games.
Excellent.
And also, I would like to urge, like, why are we dependent on the state for the social welfare? I mean, we have so many religious communities here. Like, Hindus can start their own charity. Like, Christians open up schools, like schools and
But
colleges, even the
they're all
hospitals.
facing issues, right? People keep calling the Christians rice bags, then the Hindus are called something else, then the Muslims are called something else. I mean, like, like there are people willing to do good, granted, but they are still ostracized for something. And why is that? Like, what is going on?
See, that's a culture issue. And if you look at that in majority, no sane Hindu is going to call a Christian a rice bag. Like that's an online phenomenon. Or no Hindu is going to be ostracized in godforsaken India. That's just dumb. That's majorly an online phenomenon done by terminally online people. Moreover, majority there will be respect for people starting these initiatives much more than there will be disrespect, because again cosmopolitanism will come into picture, that if a previously bigoted Christian comes into a Hindu place of charity and actually sees Hindus doing good for everyone regardless of their backgrounds, he'll actually interact with these Hindus and actually think, okay, not all Hindus are bad. That's how cosmopolitanism grows.
Right.
And
So
this is,
the
I
idea
want
with
to,
yeah.
yeah.
A bit of a different spin on it. See, let's assume that we already know that we are operating in a socialist Marxist system. So what we need to do is that we need to definitely outcompete them on the policy, on the objectives that they are trying to achieve. So let what social welfare is aimed at, it is just trying to quicken up the basically quicken up the process of getting out of poverty. That needs to be done. So how do we do that? Marxist way is much slower and doesn't work. Is that getting the government involved in solving it? It will never solve the problem. We libertarians know that it won't solve the problem. Right now, the thinking is that free market will solve the problem. That's fine. It is also known that it will take some time. Policy need to be thought in terms of how can we hasten the process. So one thing is that is where freebies and all these policies come into action. So deregulation is much more difficult to convey, and all these basically any policy deriving from libertarian principles is difficult to convey. But people definitely understand money in hand and ease up of finances. That I will get access to money and all these things.
Right.
We can definitely direct policies like getting rid of. I keep repeating myself, but since everyone every day a new viewer will listen, so I'll speak against. Like for education, instead of government financing your entire education, focusing on the voucher system, consumer choice element is introduced, and in terms of like these mudra loans or these freebies of 2100 per month are too paltry. We can focus on a simple. If the government gets rid of all these indirect schemes like Narega and all, and focuses on easing up finances by simply doing an FD under the name of every individual and getting loans on that, and then he has to pay back that loan. Basically, government created an asset for someone, for everyone, and neither the bank faces any downside, and the bad actors, and now the blame for poverty falls on the individual rather than the system. So things like these can be done, and they don't cost much because currently the governments are flushed with cash and all the taxes that they are leeching out of people. So it won't be increasing the budget that much. This is not to say that there won't be some sort of second order side effects, but definitely if we move in if in the behind the scenes we move in the direction of deregulation and things like that, they will definitely temper down the any second order effects that we face. So these are the my basic point is that we need to outcompete the Marxists in the promises that they are trying to make. We know that they will always fail because of their fundamental assumptions, but we need to find ways in our framework as well that we can achieve them faster. And right now, since the technological landscape has improved much better with the internet and transport infrastructure, things will move at a different pace, and policy needs to be thought in terms of that as well. Because Bihar's makhana is being sold in the United States at 1000x. When was it ever possible before? So
Right.
policy needs to be thought in terms of that. How can we facilitate these things like that? people actually who are benefiting from it, they talk about these things more. That let's talk about things like energy subsidy. It is not a subsidy; it is tax that is already returned.
Right.
So if we get rid of the taxes, the prices come. Already
It's
prices
done.
come.
It's like
Yeah,
an
yeah.
unnecessary process
Why,
to do an unnecessary thing.
like we promised that we will give cheaper cycles. How can we do it? We get rid of the taxes on the cycles. So things like that. These are the things that we notice. We are talking the same thing, but we will actually be able to deliver it and even better, and
Right.
while not breaking our principles. So this is where the policy thinking needs to happen. A lot
So,
of the problem will be solved by deregulation, but we definitely do need to do the show of all these basically transactional activities to show that you are getting something for your value.
so on a scale of like 1 to 10, like how confident are you guys feeling that the Indian public, let's talk about X at least, on X or on YouTube or in general, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you think they'll understand about this, or will they all be like, no, this manifesto won't work? We have given a lot of explanation, right, for a lot of things, but even after this, what do you think the reaction is going to be from people? Are they going to be like, no, ye nahi jayega India mein, no, this is not going to happen? Or do you actually feel like they might
See,
like understand something? Like
I wouldn't have started. I wouldn't have started if I didn't believe in the cause, and we will definitely have our good day in the future. But the biggest source of my biggest source of optimism is the kind of people that I see joining the movement. All of you are from technical fields or have done some doing well in life. The followers that I see, they are ML engineer. They are well grounded in reality. So all the creative people, productive people. Dhruv pointed out that libertarianism is the movement of the productive people. But I think Himanshu pointed out that libertarianism is the movement of the productive people. So productive people weren't organized, and we are giving them an organization to build their. We are giving them a platform to amplify their voices. So that isn't much of a worry. Political fortunes, we cannot say too much. Not political fortunes. Election fortunes, we cannot say too much because that requires some maneuvering and all, and that is a whole another thing. But definitely, our ideals and people will definitely get connected, and because political caste, and no, there is no chance that 100 years political caste will be different. 75 years they have been remain the same. For the next 75 years, they will
exactly
remain
my
the same.
point. Like
Yeah.
what I mean, like what is going to happen like after this? Are people really going to bite into it? I know like people who kind of run in certain circles will immediately understand this. Like they don't even need to watch more than 5 minutes of this, right? They'll be like, yeah, I know what these guys are talking about.
Yeah. So
But there are people who will watch the entire thing and be like, hey, where is call the lawyer, the police? These guys are anti-nationals.
yes, so we're definitely not international. We are.
I know,
We
I
are.
know we are not, but naturally,
I
I
mean,
feel like there is a huge population of people who are going to be like, no, you guys leave the country. You're not,
you
you're
need to
not
invite
Indian.
some special people from our GC, then you'll know what anti-nationalism is. You yet to hear from them. And so, I mean, if you hear those radical views, like we will be like moderates.
I know our views aren't radical or anything, but I'm saying like how many of you have been called an anti-national at some point? Like all of us have been called for making like relatively logical points, right? There are some people who probably just won't get it. Like they'll be like,
Yeah,
hey.
I'm just happy that we are getting called Soros ka agent. So, like, I'm just satisfied with that.
I know. I was seeing that there was a comment even in one of my DMs saying Soros ka agent. I mean, like I don't know how that connection came. Can we shed light on that? Why are people connecting
What
us
sort
with
of?
like?
I don't get it. What sort of anti-national thing has the party handle ever said, or I have ever said in the space? And
Is
rather,
it?
I'm saying that I'm more pro-national than the BJP because they are trying to empower people, and I'm trying to enrich people. So who is more? I'm trying to.
I know it sounds more logical, but what do you think the other side is going to say? They are not
No,
going
they are
to,
just they are just shilling for nationalists. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Our vision is much broader. We believe in civilization. Nations come and go, but civilization, Indian civilization, one of the best, needs to
yeah,
thrive
man.
and restore the glory of it.
I mean, look at us, four different people, like completely different. Like we actually
Yeah,
talked about this before. We could be
we are
from four different countries, but we are still working together. We are having fun, like in the middle of the night, without
yeah,
dinner.
and we are as diverse. I am from Haryana. Himanshu is from Bihar. You are from Tamil Nadu. And
Dhruv is going
Dhruv
to
is
be
from
missing.
Maharashtra. Dhruv is from Maharashtra. So we are definitely north, south, east, west is going on.
So I still can't understand what the hell this BJP is talking about. Like, where are all these
But
people who can't work together hanging around in the park right now? Like, I don't understand.
to a certain extent, I get the impulse that they are coming from, because Congress is really, sorry, leave this out. The opposition party is really not interested in the affairs of the nation, and their top leader is definitely doesn't have any skin in the game of the future. We are no way, shape, or form are aligned with the opposition party. We may have our quarrels with the incumbents, but we have no quarrels with the. We are definitely in no way supporters of the opposition. They are even worse than the incumbents. So those who have certain accusations flung at us, I think that they are unfounded in reality.
One thing is for sure. If we are anything, we are just honest. That is a, like, at the end of the day, we cannot do anything else other than just be, matter of fact and honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Additionally, I said that in some previous episode as well, that most of us don't even want to be politicians.
Yeah.
We have other areas of interest. Since no one seems to be doing a good enough job, we have to come in and share our views on it as well. Talking about the future of the party. First, I said that amazing people are joining the movement. Secondly, as long as human beings exist, will for freedom exists, and since our whole policy and our ideology is built around individual liberty and freedom, we will never be out of fashion. Even though even though in future we may have some winters of communism, individual liberty is rooted in the human psyche, and since we aren't ants, human beings will always strive for more and more individual liberty and space. So we will never be out of the discourse. Swatantra Party couldn't maybe due to some bad luck and things like that couldn't hack it, but Libertarian movement is
it is picking up steam. It's because it's not just us who are trying to break it anymore. I think many countries are trying to break this after a couple of successes in the world. And on that note, libertarianism is always going to be in fashion, whether people like it or not. It's going to be something that everybody is going to strive to achieve, that level of personal freedom. That's going to be I feel, the competition for the future. Which country is going to be the most freest citizens on the planet to achieve, experience, live, move around, and do everything? That is going to, I feel, define whatever it is. And I feel the Libertarian Manifesto of India is a great start to it. Thank you, Dhruv, for first of all writing it at your own peril of your own life. Thank you, Tushar, for joining us, and Himanshu, I think, went for dinner. So let's end this thing. If you guys have any comments, as viewers, you'd have seen this episode. If you have any comments or questions, we'd like you to put it down in the comment section here, and then we will actually take a look through it and try to figure out. We will keep doing different episodes like this, or whatever it takes to get your queries answered. That's all we are there for, as well as not only the podcast, but there is spaces as well. Every Friday night at 9 p.m., 9 or 9:30 p.m. It will be decided on that day, but 9 p.m. is when spaces will be there. And there also is free what is that, Tushar? The free
real free market.
Real free market, yes. There is also real free market. We have a form there. If you have a business that you feel could take advantage of the real free market, we want to prove that to you. So that is another thing as well, where you can find us on Twitter. Just search for real free market, and we'll put the links down here in the comment section as well, so you can come in there. As well as this is episode 6. If you haven't watched episode 1 to 5, please do. And that's it from the Libertarian Party of India. I hope you enjoyed our unveiling and explanation of the manifesto. We look forward to your questions. Thank you for watching, and you two guys, thank you for joining. We'll say good night.
Thank you for inviting, and thank you
Thank you
for
for inviting.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.